All right, welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. So the seed for this presentation is the questions we frequently get about how do I start? How do you do it? How do you do social prescribing? So we're just going to start off with a round of introductions to meet who's in the room. So Albisa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my pleasure, Natasha. Hello, everyone. I am Alvisa, and I am a health promoter with Rexdale Community Health Center. Good to be here. Yeah.
Great. And Althea, how about you next?
Hi, all. I'm Althea Martin Risden, Director of Health Promotions at Rexdale Community Health Center. Great to be here.
And Carrie?
Hi, everyone. My name is Carrie Cumming, and I'm a health promoter at the Guelph Community Health Center.
Great. And Kim?
Hello, everyone. I'm Kim, and I am the Community Connector at the Guelph Community Health Center.
Great. My name's Natasha, and I'm working at the Alliance, but I was also a health promoter for a long time, so I may share snippets from my own work experience. So we're going to hand it over to Albisa. So we have at least two community health centers with strong representation here. So we've got Rexdale and we've got Guelph in the house. So I'm going to hand it over to Albisa to just give us a little presentation about how social prescribing started at Rexdale and a little bit about their journey and their work with social prescribing.
Thank you, Natasha. Thank you so much for that. Yes, so as I said, I am Alvisa and I work as a health promoter at Rexdale Community Health Center. And I've been lucky enough in the last 2 years to join the social prescription movement. More specifically, I worked on social prescription projects that we had here at Rexdale Community Health Center, mostly focusing on food prescription. But I work with some wonderful colleagues that have been part of the different aspects of social prescribing throughout the years here. So today I'll try to just go through an overview of social prescribing over the years here at Rexdale and maybe just share some processes that were involved with the way social prescribing has taken shape here at Rexdale Community Health Center. And I'm also lucky to be joined by my director, Althea, here, and she can support to share more about the historical perspective, like over the last years. The way it started here at Rexdale Community Health Center is that we had this provincial funded program called Healthy Kids Community Challenge. And we first heard about social prescribing from one of our colleagues that works with the seniors program. And she had heard about social prescribing in the UK. And so we were just waiting for the right time to find an opportunity to tap in. And so when Healthy Kids Community Challenge was funded, we used this program to introduce a social prescribing model that was focused on family-friendly activities. And so when we first started, it was newcomer families mostly and single-parent families. So it was more about activities that supported families. So be it fun time, be it educational, be it raising awareness about eating more vegetables and fruit and more water and more physical activities for children and youth. So this is the very start, and this was a couple of years ago. And then as that went on and we worked with clients and families, more opportunities presented itself. So then we had a pilot with Alliance for Healthier Communities along other CHCs. So this was for an 18 months pilot project that started in June 2018 until December 2019. And it had a very set process where we were working together with community health centers on developing a framework that is shared. And so I think Josephine is sharing some of the resources from the framework that was developed through this project. But basically that meant support over this time that was for again, it was for clients. So this one was not just for families, for clients. And here at Rexdale, we focused on supporting clients that had food insecurity, but also clients that felt isolated, newcomer families, and clients that were listing concerns with chronic diseases as well. If we can move to the next slide, please. And so as we moved on, and this is just a general overview of these different ways we did social prescribing here. In 2018, we had a partnership with Food Shares. So we were using a model of social prescribing, but specifically prescribing food. So in 2018, we were helping more than 100 families receiving food support with fruits and vegetables, but also connecting them with different services. So these are clients that are in our catchment area in North Etobicoke here in Toronto. And so that was such a successful initiative that we were able to create a strong partnership. And then from that, we were reached by Toronto Employment Services, and we were able to scale this on a city level, where we collaborated with 12 community health centers across Toronto to scale this. And so as a result, during 2021 and 22, we helped more than 350 families they received fruits and vegetables for a period of 6 months. So, but it wasn't just food. What was great was that these families that were receiving Ontario Works and had low income, a lot of the times is that they were connected with extensive supports that were part of the community health centers. So it was also an environment of a lot of collaboration between Toronto Employment Service workers, navigators in community health centers. And so a lot of partnerships were strengthened through this, but also a lot of families got connected with services at CHCs. Now I will move on into the role aspects of social prescribing. And this was different depending on which project we looked like. So for example, in the beginning, when we started, it was mostly with prescriber was mostly a doctor and a nurse practitioner. So like it was coming from the primary care, connecting to client support services. And so in the very beginning, and I'm going to share here a very good practice, is that we had a prescription pad where we listed all these activities and supports that were available for families. So it was, for example, tickets to go to an aquarium, tickets to go to a place where a family could have playing activities for their children. And so, or programs that were for families and children. And so the doctors and nurse practitioners would have that prescription pad. And so they already knew what was existing. And so when they were meeting their clients, they had that in mind, and that was very well received by them as well. And so they would see the client, and then they would give them, they would talk about that, what's available, and then they would give them a prescription card. And so in some way that really validated the prescription experience. And then they were told, the clients were told that they will be receiving a call from one of the navigators. And so that's how it started. So for our first, this was kind of the referral pathway. So these are generally the roles, the prescriber. However, this evolved as we moved on. So as we moved on, a prescriber could be anyone at the center from the health promotion team. So our different colleagues that work with nutrition, that work with chronic disease management, that work with families and children. So anyone could make this prescription. And that, because we're a community health center and we have our EMR system, that just makes it easier, because that comes through the system. And that the prescriber in this case were our client support workers that were doing the navigator role. The social prescription, so that could look different things in terms of the pathway. Yeah, you can move on. Yeah. So this is just how that changed as it happened. And so at this point, when we do social prescribing, anyone at the center can refer clients to the navigator. This is how the prescription card looked like in the beginning. So the clients were given this, and then they were told to expect a call. So in terms of social prescriptions, our pocket of social prescriptions involved a lot of different things. It was internal programs that we had, a list of them, cooking classes, mental health workshops. It had creative workshops. It had food prescriptions so that we knew we had an amount of food boxes that we could deliver. And then as we moved on, so just to give a sense of how this evolved, we started small with a few partnerships and with a few things. And as time passed and more partnerships were developed, this extended. So then we had external programs in the community, and then we created partnerships with different arts institutions, but also businesses as well that were willing to help. So then clients would be able to get tickets for free, tickets to family activities, and this is all, the list is always evolving as we're trying to create more partnerships that are relevant for the clients that we're giving these services to. So in terms of the pathway, this is kind of how it looked like the most recent one. So anyone in the team can make a referral, and then the navigator, here the name is Ella, but anyone on your team that was the navigator would get that referral on PSS, and then they would fulfill the health outcomes. So the vital 8 questions. As a CHC, we have these already integrated in PSS. And so this is how we would start. The navigator would start the conversation, speak with the client about what their needs are, and fill these outcomes, and as part of the conversation, figure out what's the best support that they can create together, and what resources are available to connect these clients. This is how the referral looked like in our EMR. And some of the encodes, and I know this is CHC specific, and I know that here we may have people coming from different organizations, but these are just some of the encodes we used. I know part of the conversations were that these sometimes can be limiting, but this is just to give a practical sample of how it looked like. So the follow-up with the clients, the client would receive the call. They would identify goals together with the navigator, and then the navigator would be the person to facilitate that prescription. So if it was something within the center, and depending on the conversation, right? So if the client was able to reach that resource alone, you can kind of figure that out as part of the conversation, but they would definitely receive help if that was needed. For example, even with the referral, if extra support was needed, then the navigator would do that and arrange things, for example, tickets. So if they were to go somewhere, the barriers that would need to be considered, for example, offering transportation, offering food. So these are some of the things that when you create the list of prescriptions are things that you need to consider as well. How viable are these for the clients? And then hopefully the client would follow up, and then they would receive a call from the navigator just to check in if they were able to do that, if they needed extra support, but also to fill out some of the survey, because a lot of the time we were tracking this data just to see the impact that this was having on our clients. And this leads me to the next slide, which was evaluation. So because we have PSS, we can collect data from EMR, and then we did surveys. We did surveys with the clients. We did surveys with our teams that were referring on a regular basis, just to see how we can improve the process. Some of the connections that we've created, and this is just a list because this is always expanding, are some of the art institutions, musical institutions, and a lot of, we work heavily with our partners. So we collaborate a lot, and that's very beneficial for our clients because we can kind of see and have up-to-date information about what resources are out there. And so be able to make all these connections. We can move to the next one. I think we can share the story later. So some of the lessons when we did our evaluation that we got is that this did not require a lot of time for our primary care providers to offer the referral. So like when they had that prescription pad, and we also do presentations with all of our teams, and when they knew that this didn't take a lot of time, and having that prescription pad really helped. They also received well that the fact that they could give that to the clients, and in some ways it offered legitimacy. And so it's important to keep our teams up to date about what prescriptions we have, also providing transportation and covering costs to remove the barriers when we do these prescriptions. And then also a big part is relationship building so that you can expand that bucket of social prescription options that you have. And then also finding creative ways so that clients don't have to come so many times, for example, just to receive a ticket. So if you could leave some that are closed there or arrange some online versions, that was something we received. And because resources are limited, one thing that we received as feedback was also that it would be great to tap into programs that are already existing or creating programs that are more cost effective, and also just creating opportunities for clients and families to socialize. Thank you so much. This was just a brief overview, and we're gonna go more into details when we have the conversation after. Thank you.
So that's how Rexdale did it. Let's find out how Guelph did it. And we'll hand it over to Carrie for a different take.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, just gonna share my screen here. Just give me a moment. How are we doing there? Can you see that? Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Yeah, thanks for joining, everyone. We're excited to share with you today about our social prescribing journey. Really, it started back in 2018 with one of those Alliance bulletins that comes out at the end of every week. And there was a call for some pilot sites. And I took a look at that and thought, wow, this sounds exciting, and also aligns with the work that we're already doing at the health center. And I believe that there was also some reference to ukulele lessons or something like that that piqued my interest. So discussed it with our leadership, and they said go for it. And so that's how we initially got introduced with the Alliance's pilot project. I will move along here. So I am Carrie. My colleague Kim, who has introduced herself, is there as well. So we've already done the introduction. So we'll move right along. To give a brief high-level overview of our social prescribing work, I'm going to share this social prescribing model. It looks like a lot, but we'll walk through it. I'm going to hang out on this slide for a little bit because I think as we do that, you'll kind of hear that how did we do it and what works for us. So the first thing that I'll point out is that when we had social prescribing experts and mentors come over from the UK in 2018, they talked about two different models of social prescribing. One was that link worker model where a staff role would act as a bridge between the clinical team and community resources, and the other was a collaborative practice model. And that used something that they referred to as health champions that are included with co-design as a key element. And so at the CHC, we use a hybrid approach. And so if you look along the top, those top three boxes there, you'll see kind of our basic pathway for social prescribing starts off with a staff referral, which is the spark that gets the process going. And then we have a community connector, which is Kim, which is similar to that linker. And then we have community resources with the collaborative practice component. We're not going to go linearly. If you look in the center of that community connector box, let's start there because we'll skip over the staff referral and come back to it in green. But the community connector role is so important that I wanted to explain that first because I talked about that a lot. So we hired the community connector role just before the pandemic. The role is half-time and specifically dedicated to receiving and following up on social prescriptions. And we were able to advocate for that funding with our leadership by looking at our existing resources that we had available because our leadership really felt that this work was important, which was great. And so, but it is half-time. and again, dedicated to receiving and following up on social prescriptions. And so Kim knows so many local programs and services and resources. And if she doesn't know about them, she can definitely, she's a pro at researching and can find things out and connect folks to external resources. And this role is really important because we found that we were offering a whole bunch of programs. We had so many community programs happening, but many staff, especially our primary care providers, they didn't have the capacity to keep track of what programs we have going on internally, let alone externally. We heard some of that last concurrent session from some of the clinical providers, that it's just a lot to understand and to absorb and be able to connect people with. So they really feel that they can do their jobs better with that community connector, with someone who's a point person who can also help problem solve around barriers to participation. It's one thing to say, oh, you should go, that we have this great yoga program, but then it's another thing to help problem solve. What bus do I need to get to? Do I need to have fancy clothes? Do I take a water bottle? There's all these sorts of barriers. And so that's what Kim does so well. And so we lean on our community connector role a lot. We'll go back to the green staff referral component. So let's get back to that. So when, like Albessa said, when we first started social prescribing, the initial focus for us too was receiving them from physicians and nurse practitioners. We quickly expanded, and all of our staff who use the EMR can make a social prescription. So the social prescribing process typically begins with a discussion with a client, with a provider or allied health staff member, and it's followed up by a social prescription using the custom form in PS that was already shared. Our staff give social prescriptions for things that are not typically part of the medical model, because we know that these non-medical supports have a really powerful impact on health and well-being. And the tracking of those supports was really a big shift for us, because we were not previously tracking data well. So we now have a much more structured and organized process for connecting folks to community resources. Also in the green, you'll see something that says super clients. So super clients are those folks that come to our health center very frequently because perhaps of some unmet needs. So our mentors from the UK, they had success with contacting their frequently visited clients. And some of the research showed that about 20 to 50% of the visits to healthcare providers are non-medical in nature, and in fact could be better served by others. So just before the pandemic, Kim did a lot of proactive outreach calls to clients. So we did a data poll for each of our providers' top dozen or so folks who came very frequently. We talked to the providers about what their challenges and needs were, and then Kim reached out to them and would just have a check-in conversation. How's it going? How are you spending your time? Are you interested in connecting to any of the programs? Do you know about our programs? If you are interested, here's some things that I can help you with. I can even go with you if you want. If they're interested in volunteering, she would connect them to that. And then really importantly, she'd also ask if they want her to call them back again, just to check in. And almost everyone did. And so that's something that we did a big, a kind of a big blitz on before the pandemic. And then of course the pandemic, we've done lots of client calls and check-ins since that time as well. But that's something that has worked for us to get people connected and aware of some of our resources. Let's see here. I've also included here in the green our fresh food prescription program. So this is an amazing piece of our social prescribing work, and it's led by my colleague Abby Richer. No relation to Kim Richer. She did a whole separate presentation for that today, so I won't go too much into that work. With our food prescription work, clients are often connected directly into that program by their providers through Abby. Kim also supports with that, as well as a lot of other food security, food delivery programs as well. I think we've covered everything in the green. here. So yeah, basically the process begins with the staff meeting with the client, giving a social prescription. That prescription goes to the community connector, or the community connector herself generates social prescriptions. That happens quite frequently. And then the links to community resources, which are in the blue on the right-hand side of the slide, come into play. And so in order to have social prescribing, you need to have some resources to link clients to. And so there's 3 rows of community resources. And just to distinguish a little bit between them, the first one is collaborative practice resources. The second is internal resources, and the third is external. And so again, collaborative practice is where community development and client voice really shines in our social prescribing model. So I see collaborative practice opportunities as being kind of the gold standard for community resources, because not only are clients connected to the supports, but they're invited to give back, to share their skills and expertise, to become peer leaders and volunteers, and help in that co-design and co-creation of programs and services, which we know gives a lot of meaning and joy to people. So there's a few key things that we have in place to make that collaborative practice piece work. We have an established peer leader program that has been running for a while, since 2009. And so community members from our priority neighborhoods and our clinical clients actually lead programs under the Guelph CHC banner as volunteers. So we already had that established before we started social prescribing, which was really great. So I helped to oversee the peer leader program, but don't kind of parachute programs into those neighborhoods. We discuss and co-create along with the peer leaders who really design, implement, and help to evaluate. And Kim and I lend support as needed to them. And we also have a client advisory committee that we invite social prescribing clients to attend. That client advisory gives feedback on our policies, programs, and acts as a link to our board, etc. And we also have a volunteer program and a volunteer coordinator, which we're really lucky to have, and provides a lot of backbone support to a lot of this, a lot of our peer leader work. And we can link clients to other volunteer opportunities too within the organization if they aren't interested in being a peer leader or a client advisory committee member. And so these collaborative practice resources are really excellent connection points. Clients have told us again that it really increases their sense of purpose, sense of community, sense of belonging and giving back. They feel valued and needed. They build skills and develop great programs in the community. In the light blue there, we have listing of some of our internal programs and services that the Community Connector links clients to. We also have some amazing external programs in the Guelph community. There are several there that we have great partnerships or funding specifically for around social prescribing, and I've listed some of them there. So one of them is the links to well-being. So we've heard a little bit about that today. So again, won't go into too much detail on that. Kim also does a great job on taking a lead with a great partnership with the University of Guelph's Vet College. And we recognize the important companions that pets can be. So that's part of our social prescribing program. And Kim is great at getting people connected to that. And we're also doing a lot of digital literacy and digital equity work at our health center. So as I'm sure some of you are as well. So we have a device lending library with the Guelph Public Library that's specifically for Guelph CHC clients. They can access devices through the Guelph Public Library with a social prescription. And along the bottom there, I've included just a little bar with the Alliance for Healthier Communities there, because I think that they're a big part of our social prescribing work that we've done in bringing social prescribing to Ontario, increasing the profile of this work, supporting member centers like us with resources to get started. And obviously with today, they're already, they're continuing on with this commitment around social prescribing and creating, this great day for us, as well as lots of guides and infographics and things like that. So just wanted to acknowledge the Alliance. Okay, so I'll move along here. Here's some examples of our social prescriptions. We take a health equity approach, as I've mentioned, to help clients work through the economic, geographical, interpersonal, and psychological barriers they might have to following through with some of these social prescriptions. The Community Connector can assist with completing subsidies, supporting clients, again, to understand what buses to take or accompany them to new programs for the first time. And over the past 2 years, social prescribing work has been difficult, as I'm sure a lot of you have experienced with the pandemic restrictions, limiting programs and offerings, as well as creating those secondary effects like the digital equity issues and increased food security among our clients. And so food prescriptions have been voluminous. Those are the highest, that's the highest percentage of social prescriptions that we've received is food prescriptions. The next highest is prescriptions for social programs, social connections, and then third is mental health programs. But what we're hoping is that now that things are opening up and there's more programs available, there'll be more opportunities to connect people with those other things. The food prescriptions will still remain fairly high, but hopefully we'll have a few more things to refer people to. And I also just wanted to quickly share this table, as it was really helpful for us and maybe for others also. It's just an outline that we customize based on our own center's social prescribing focus, considering other allied health roles that we have, like social work, dietitians, health guides, parent outreach workers. We wanted to have really good role clarity for the Community Connector role. This is based off of a document that the Alliance had sent way back when we first started. And this is important too, because Kim is really highly skilled. And so she gets referrals for things all the time that are kind of outside of the scope of the Community Connector role. And so this has been a really good tool for us to, again, help clarify roles, provide a scope check for Kim, and to help generate appropriate social prescriptions for her. And here's just a few numbers. So social prescribing steadily increased at Guelph CHC with over 800 social prescriptions received in the past few years, which is great considering our roster size and the fact that the Community Connector role is half-time. And we also have had a wide breadth of providers embracing social prescribing, which is great, with 12 primary care providers, which I think is all of them, and 19 allied health staff sending social prescriptions through. And I think that wraps up my time. I think I went over 10 minutes. I apologize, Natasha. Our contact information is there, and please feel free to reach out to Kim or I if you have any questions. And I'll stop sharing now. Thank you.
You're asking lots of questions.
Oh, okay. I can't see the questions. I can't see them.
The chat's
anyway.
really blowing up, which I like to see. It's great.
Okay.
So I have some questions that we talked about maybe asking, and I'm going to see if some of the questions in the chat can link to some of the questions we talked about. So like people really want to get right into the nuts and bolts. So maybe, I don't know, maybe we should shift that way. So so maybe I'll start with the chat. There's just some like nuts and bolts questions. So how many clients does the Community Connector see each month? That's one of the questions. So maybe would Kim, would you be a good person to start that with?
I technically do not have that answer. I really just, it's been really quick since COVID and things have changed very drastically. And one of the other comments in here is, how do I do it part-time? And one of the things, yeah, I was laughing too, Carrie. One of the things I did was I really advocated at the Neighborhood Coalition for more hours within my community, which is, I live in the Onward Willow neighborhood, which is also where our satellite location is. And so, and a lot of those individuals do use our services for a lot of different things, whether programming or clinical services, social work, dietitian, you name it. And so I really advocated for some extra hours. So I'm actually not only the Community Connector for the Guelph Community Health Center, but also for the Neighborhood Support Coalition in the Onward Willow Neighborhood Group for 10 hours. So that's it kind of overlaps. I might not be putting it in the EMR per se, but it kind of overlaps because I'm still reaching those individuals that still need those connections. And if they are part of our clients, then I do more under the GCHC. But if they're not, I'm still connecting people in our priority population to different programs. And sometimes I'm able to put them in as outreach, depending on the situation. But in actuality, I don't. That's one great thing about my role is I haven't been told, make sure you do this. In catching up, I have been told to make sure that, to get at least so many done a week. But it's really hard to navigate that for the sole fact that I can call somebody and it could be about food. And then it ends up being an hour conversation because we're talking about social connection. We're talking about getting connected to the links to well-being. We're talking about cooking classes. We're talking like all these different things. So it started off as one thing and it goes into a whole different thing. And so it's really hard to say how many I do per se. I could probably get those numbers if I sat and wrote it down. But one of the other things is a lot of it's calling people because we know how diverse our community is. We know how complex numbers keep changing. People don't have answering machines. Like it's a lot of work to be able to reach individuals. And sometimes it's reaching them where I know that they're going to be, right? Depending on the situation. So I don't think, Carrie, that we have an answer of how many exactly I do.
Maybe I'll throw that question over to Rexdale. Like, do you have a sense of just approximately how many clients receive are receiving social prescribing services every month?
So for us, it depends on the program. So for example, with our pharmacy program, which is our food, we capped it at a number. So initially we had within a partnership with Food Share, we calculated how much the food would cost. And we had a pilot project for about a year. So we supported 90 families with that project because we had just so much money in the pot. We also supported, once that project grew and we had the partnership with Toronto Employment and Social Services, they also set some numbers for us. So the first year we worked with 2 CHC with Toronto Employment and Social Services, and we knew that was 60 families. And so when you say 60 families, though, it may turn out to be 200, 300, 400 individuals, depending on the family size. So again, going back to numbers, we capped how many families we were serving, and depends on the program. So for Healthy Kids Community Challenge, we saw several hundred people, and we have somebody at that time dedicated to making the calls to say, here is your prescription. That we got the connector got a copy of the prescription that the client received. And then so we called them at that time to say, okay, we know we got a prescription. Let's arrange for us to fill that prescription for you. And then there was connections afterwards. So that was more on a short-term kind of basis. And we did about 400 or 500 individuals over a 3-month period. But that was, as I said, someone dedicated to doing all that work. So the short answer is it depends.
And I just want to point out too, Natasha, that a social prescription completed is different than working on social prescriptions, right? So I might complete one, but open up another one at the same time, right? Because then it's a whole different service that we're going into. Or the fact is I might complete one social prescription for food, but then that person is getting a call every single month for the same food prescription that was done like 2 years ago, right? And they're still on the they're still on the service. It's just not a social prescription anymore, but they're still connected to that resource. So really, it just keeps going. It really, and then when you
Yeah.
call to follow up, there's another social prescription that usually
Yes.
happens there. So it's
So the first social prescription, like often at our center, would be the coffee drop-in, was like the gate.
We lost her a bit.
Participation in many others. Anyone would like to share a story?
You froze for a
Oh,
bit,
darn, I
Natasha.
think.
What were you? Yeah.
Maybe Albisa, if you wanted to share a client story.
Yes, definitely. I can definitely do that. This is so the client said, for me specifically, I'm a single mom, so I am low income. I don't have money to take my kids out. I live in Toronto 14 years and I have never taken my kids anywhere because I never had any money to pay. And this client, with her children, she was able to receive tickets to go to Ripley Aquarium. And so food and transportation was paid for her. And so this is one of the testimonies we received.
It's very powerful. How about you, Carrie? Do you have any client stories you'd like to share?
I think Kim was going to share.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kim.
Are you able to do that, Kim? Or would you like me to?
No, I can certainly share client stories. I didn't have one in particular. It was kind of similar to what I was talking about earlier, how it just goes from one to another. But if I had to pick one in particular, there's somebody that actually is kind of standing in my head right now, and it's a gentleman. And food insecurity was the reason for the prescription, and it was a super client kind of prescription. So an individual in the community that had a need. So there was a conversation about different food resources, but in that conversation led them to going to the neighborhood group and getting a hamper from there. And then from that, learning some of the things that they do. And now that individual is a volunteer, right? So no kids at home anymore, looking for some direction, super handy. And now they're volunteering. And the fun part about it all is the individual is now moving out of the area, but still gonna have that connection and still come back and volunteer, but also wants to learn about where they're moving, what's that neighborhood group, what's the access. So already has like that kind of seed, right? To kind of look and see what's available, and not only available, but these services that are in some of our communities are specifically for those individuals, right? So, and so, yeah, so I just, that one's sticking in my head because even though they're moving, they're still going to stay connected. They still want to come to like our dinner dance kind of thing for the community, which we just started up in the neighborhood area. And, you know, so that strong connection and that strong foundation for that individual and their family to grow. That's just one that's many that I can think of, especially when it comes to gardening. And just that garden connection, that garden family now for people, and helping with the stability and sustainability of food for individuals, families. So lots of connections. You're muted.
So,
I wondered if anyone just wanted to share any of the successes, like something that's made your program successful, or some of the challenges you may have encountered along the way. Just throw it out to the group.
so there's a question here about how do we pay for the tickets, and that's one of our successes. When we started initially with the Healthy Kids Community Challenge. So Abisa said we started with the Alliance Project, but we started with the Healthy Kids Project, and the staff did a lot of groundwork in connecting with the art gallery, the aquarium, restaurants, different partners in the community. and they offered us tickets. And then after that, we had a partnership with the Toronto Public Library where they have a program called the MASS program. And so they get tickets from other organizations and places in Toronto, that we had the worker from the library sit in at the health center to support our clients accessing those tickets. So that's how we extended our social prescription. And unfortunately for us, I must say, at the beginning, when we had the Healthy Kids dollars as well, we were able to pay for some stuff. So we were able to pay for a family to go to dinner. Most probably a family of 5 or larger wouldn't be able to go out and have a meal at a restaurant. And also we paid for individuals to go to the gym, to get a gym membership for the year. So we had funds, and as Albisa said, based on what I think we had 5 different focuses for the Healthy Kids Challenge. So, you know, if it was movement, yeah, we bought some tickets, we bought some resources, whether or not from a local gym, or we bought somebody into the center and ran programs. So we were you know, fortunate and well resourced at that time to be able to implement those things. But since then, we've gone on to work with partners, and when I think it was the ROM decided that they were going to go Toronto-wide, they had the press conference at the CHC because they were inspired by what we were doing at Rexdale CHC. So that's also a success story for us.
Like, my sense is that organizations like the ROM, or, you know, some of these museums and galleries are looking to partner with other organizations to bring in some, you know, perhaps non-traditional patrons. So I think it's always worth approaching. If you have an idea for a partner, it's always worth starting the conversation, I think. Does anyone else want to share any successes or challenges they've encountered on their social prescribing journey here?
I saw that there
Tasha,
was, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think I'm going along the same line, Kim. Some of the questions in the chat, yeah.
Yeah, so the one here, I don't know if it was the one that you were thinking of, but how do you support people who may have mental health issues such as anxiety, as an example, and have difficulties with attending groups, etc., but yet wish to connect to activities in the community? Are there any participants that wouldn't be considered for a social prescribing program? So I have never, as a community connector, and I started in this role before being a community connector under my health promotion admin support, back when it all started, as well as a peer leader in the community as a volunteer. And I have never, ever said no to a social prescription for the basis of somebody's challenges or barriers to accessing. I've always worked with them to try and navigate where they're at, what best suits them, and what can we do as a health center to try and, like, if they're wanting to get involved, okay, what does that look like for them, and just meeting them where they're at. And so sometimes it's me going for the first time with them, and COVID put quite the wrinkle in things, but there is times that I get to do that, and now it's starting up again. But when it comes to mental health, absolutely, they would never be turned away. It's just meeting them where they're at, seeing what you can do. And we do have some smaller groups that I kind of maybe, like, if the person says that they want to do something social, but they don't want to do it in person, well, social time isn't that big of a group. You can learn the Zoom, it's safe, and kind of that idea. But then there's other things in the community, like, say they want to go to the senior center and do the links to well-being, but they have a lot of anxiety. So that's maybe where I would go do a warm transfer, which I have for everybody that has gone, because there's I hate to say this, but there is a difference between our priority populations and some of the individuals at the senior center in our community. and they feel it personally before they even step in the door. And so doing that warm connection and letting them see that that space is available to them, I think is really helpful. And if they want it, right? So it's just having that conversation, listening to what they like are interested in. They might not know what they want, but in a conversation, it usually comes out. And sometimes it's more than one conversation, I guess, is the way to go with that answer.
Mhm. So only a minute or two left here. I wanted to, I don't know if you wanted to add something, Albisa?
Yeah, maybe just to add to that, Kim, is that depending on the complexity of the client's needs, like we're always aware that there's other supports, like we have case managers, we have mental health, so then a referral could extend there as well.
So just in our last few moments here, I wanted to give everyone an opportunity, if you have any last thoughts or some insights or a call to action or just any last thoughts that maybe I didn't give you a chance to speak to yet. So
I think we've covered it. I think
I don't know.
what we'd
Anything you
say
want to
is to say that, social prescription opens up so many doors, and it's very diverse and varied. And take a look at your community and see what resonates for your community, what fits. A lot of what Kim said about finding out where people are at. So there we can talk about it, and there can be guidance given, but I think in each community will look a little bit different, just as LCHCs are different. We did so our social prescriptions across the region. So happy to connect with people around how we did it, and that can help to support how you go, even to get started and how you go about it. But just to let you know that there is no one template, and there is no one way right and no right way of doing it either. So do what works for you.
Great. And maybe I'll just give the last moment to Carrie, if you have any last thoughts.
I think Althea did a great job of summarizing there. I'll just say one thing, maybe the folks who are here are just starting off, but I think as CHCs and people who are doing this work, we know we have a good thing going here. We know the power of social prescribing. And I think kind of one of the things that, we want to scope up the social prescribing within our agencies, but I think something that we're hoping to do in the near future is to scope up the work and expand the work in our OHT as well. And so I know that myself and our leadership have talked to some of our OHT leaders. Natasha has talked to some of our OHT leaders. And so social prescribing was in our initial OHT application. And it's something that, I think has promise for the future.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much to the panel. Thank you so much for all your sharing and the great questions in the chat. So thank you, everyone.